The human soul hides immense treasures in the form of dormant forces, said Carl Jung, the visionary who dared to map the darkest corners of the psyche. But let me ask you sincerely, have you ever felt that sudden anger that erupts without warning? That corrosive anxiety that gnaws at you from within without a clear cause? Have you caught yourself overreacting to the smallest events and later regretting it, as though you were no longer the master of your own self? If so, you are not insane, you are not weak, and above all, you are not alone in this inner battle. What you are experiencing is the roar of your shadow, the hidden part of you that has been chained in the basements of your unconscious. And here rests the paradox. The very darkness you fear the most, the beast you silence, is in fact the wellspring of the power you have sought all your life. But before discovering the real nature of this inner power, we must dismantle the lies you have been told about your suffering. Society, Jung warned, is an architect of collective self-deception. When you feel that sudden rage, what does your environment tell you? It's just work stress, they murmur. It's the chaos of modern life, declare experts of empty authority. They insist it's your boss, your partner, the economy, the government. They speak with confidence, while never daring to face their own unconscious. And you, like one more among the flock, nod in agreement, because it is always easier to blame the wolf outside than to confront the one you carry within. This is the deception of our age, the externalization of responsibility. We inhabit a culture that has converted victimhood into a profitable business. Every painful emotion must be explained by an external culprit. Every failure must be justified by conditions beyond you. Every weakness must be tied to some external villain. It's because I had a bad childhood, you repeat, echoing superficial therapy. It's because society oppresses me, you proclaim, following the cheap lines of self-help manuals. It's because others had more opportunities, you lament, watching life pass by. But here is what Jung's depth psychology reveals. This perpetual story of victimhood is not liberation. It is slavery, wrapped in chains that you cannot see, but that you yourself reinforce every day. Some souls, even when faced with unbearable external circumstances, preserve their dignity and their center. Others, in the same conditions, disintegrate. The difference is never in what happens, but in how the psyche responds. Jung insisted that inner strength arises not from denying suffering, but from giving meaning to it. Yet modern culture has abandoned this wisdom. Today, it is more celebrated to complain than to transform, more comfortable to accuse than to self-reflect, more common to point fingers than to gaze into the mirror of the soul. Excuse by excuse, you build your own psychological prison. I cannot love because my ex betrayed me. I cannot succeed because the system is corrupt. I cannot change because my parents damaged me. Every sentence becomes another bar in the cage of your impotence. Every time you assign blame to the outer world, you surrender a fragment of your power to forces outside your control. Jung's message resounds here. The true battle is always internal, not external. And yet, the wellness industry has distorted even this. They promise salvation through shallow formulas. They whisper that positive affirmations will dissolve decades of repression. They tell you 10 minutes of breathing will erase years of inner chaos. What an insult to the reality of your psyche. As if the complexity of the unconscious, formed through evolution and scars, could be pacified with cheap mantras. It is like trying to tame a predator with lullabies, forgetting that it has fed on raw instincts since childhood. Meanwhile, That primal force within you, that shadow that holds your destructive and creative potential, remains chained by your refusal to acknowledge it. You feed it with rejection, you strengthen it with fear, you turn it into a hidden adversary when it could become your most faithful ally. Here lies the truth that few dare to admit. You cannot destroy your shadow. You cannot pray it away. You cannot cleanse it with illusions. The shadow is not a defect. It is a vital element of your human nature, as essential as your ability to love, to create, to dream. Now, after dismantling illusions, the moment comes to face this naked truth. But beware, this truth cuts like sharpened steel and will not come decorated with false comfort. The real source of your suffering is not the external world. It is not solely your childhood, though it left marks. It is not injustice, though it exists. It is not the cruelty of others, though some are cruel. The true root is this: you have been at war with yourself, fighting an enemy you do not recognize as your own. Jung called it the shadow. But this shadow is not simply your bad side. It is infinitely more profound and, paradoxically, the key to your greatest power. The shadow is the container of everything you rejected in order to be accepted by society. It is the sum of impulses labeled forbidden, emotions judged as unworthy, desires condemned as wrong. When you felt rage at injustice as a child, they told you good children don't get angry, and so you built the wall, separating your essence from your awareness. When you felt the impulse to compete and conquer, they told you pride was sin, and you buried your instinct under false humility. When your sexuality awakened, they preached it was dirty, and you silenced one of the strongest creative energies of your nature. Nothing you denied disappeared. It only descended into the unconscious, fermenting with time. And here lies the secret Jung unveiled. Repressed energy does not weaken. It becomes stronger, more volatile, more dangerous. Like a river behind a dam, pressure builds until it bursts in destructive floods. That is why you explode irrationally at small events. It is not excess. It is accumulated force demanding release. That is why you suffer from unexplained anxiety. It is your own life energy struggling against chains you forged. The alchemists knew this. Gold is created only by working with lead, and transformation requires embracing corruption, not denying it. Jung echoed this eternal wisdom when he taught that wholeness is achieved through integration, not repression. But modern culture teaches you to fear your chaos, to medicate it, to suppress it, to exile it. Thus, you live like a dethroned king in your own kingdom. You possess immense strength, but it lies hidden in dungeons of your mind. You are a lion who has forgotten how to roar. Within your shadow rests your unused potential, your leadership, buried under false humility, your competitiveness, buried in shallow collaboration, your sensuality, buried under puritanical morality, your aggressive creativity, suffocated in the name of civility. And equally, your shadow holds your destructive aspects, your cruelty, your manipulation, your thirst for vengeance, your selfishness, your betrayal, your violence. The difference between a powerful man and a weak man is not the absence of darkness, but the conscious relationship with it. The weak one denies his shadow and is therefore controlled by it. The powerful one acknowledges his shadow and thus directs it. As Carl Jung said, "I would rather be a complete man than merely a good man, because goodness without power is impotence. Morality without strength is hypocrisy. Spirituality without darkness is fantasy." Your real problem is not that you have a shadow. Your problem is that you have been fighting against it instead of learning from it. Now that you have seen the naked truth of your condition, the inevitable question arises: how is this inner beast tamed without being devoured by it? How is darkness integrated without becoming darkness? The answer does not lie in the methods that have been sold to you for years. You will not find the solution in breathing techniques, nor in positive affirmations, nor in the systematic denial of your own nature. The path toward true power is older, more dangerous, and more transformative than any modern therapy. It is the path of conscious integration of the shadow. Carl Jung called it the process of individuation. But to truly understand it, we must strip away the psychological jargon and see it for what it really is: a deliberate descent into the underworld of your own psyche, not to be destroyed, but to reclaim the throne of your inner kingdom. The ancient Greeks knew this process. They called it katabasis, the heroic descent into the underworld. Orpheus descended to rescue Eurydice. Dante followed Virgil through the circles of hell. Christ descended to the abyss before his resurrection. These are not mere poetic metaphors, but precise psychological maps of the journey you must undertake. Yet beware, this is not a journey for the faint of heart. It is not a Sunday walk through flowered gardens. It is an expedition into hostile territory, where every step could be your last if you do not sustain lucidity and courage. The first step is recognition without judgment. You must look your shadow directly in the eyes, without blinking, without turning away, without seeking excuses. When you feel that anger that embarrasses you, do not repress it or justify it. Observe it. When envy arises and disturbs you to admit, do not deny it or rationalize it. Study it. When that vengeful impulse appears that contradicts your image of a good person, do not push it down. Examine it. As the saying goes, better the devil you know than the one you don't. Your shadow is powerful precisely because it has remained unknown, operating from the catacombs of your unconscious. By bringing it into the light of awareness, you begin to strip it of its autonomous destructive power. The second step is radical acceptance. This does not mean approving of your destructive impulses, but recognizing that they are an integral part of your human nature. It is the difference between saying, "I am not an envious person," which is denial, and saying, "I have the capacity for envy like every human being." That is acceptance. The Stoics understood this crucial distinction. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations that we must accept our whole nature, including our weaknesses, but consciously choose how to act from that knowledge. The third step is conscious differentiation. Here lies the key that separates the wise from the mad. You must learn to distinguish between recognizing an impulse and acting on it. Your shadow may whisper words of vengeance, but you choose whether to speak them. It may show you fantasies of domination, but you decide whether to carry them out. As Epictetus said, we cannot control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond to what happens. Your shadow is what happens within you. Your conscious response is what lies within your control. The fourth step is alchemical transmutation. This is where the true magic occurs. You take that shadow energy and channel it toward constructive purposes. Your repressed aggression becomes unrelenting determination to reach your goals. Your recognized envy transforms into fuel to surpass yourself. Your wounded pride is alchemized into unbreakable dignity. The great leaders of history mastered this art. They did not suppress their darkness, they directed it. The fifth step is constant vigilance. Shadow integration is not a one-time event, but a continuous process. Your inner beast will never be fully tamed, only consciously directed. You must maintain ongoing awareness like a lion tamer who never forgets he works with predators. But here lies the reward. When you achieve this integration, you access a source of power that most people cannot even imagine. You become what Jung called the complete man, someone who possesses both the capacity to create and to destroy, both light and darkness, both compassion and the necessary cruelty. And from that wholeness arises a presence that is impossible to ignore, a magnetism that cannot be fabricated, a power that cannot be faked. And now, after walking the thorny path of integration, after descending into your own hells and emerging victorious, a transformation awaits you that goes beyond what your present mind can conceive. It will not be the rosy peace promised by self-help gurus. It will not be the artificial serenity sold by merchants of cheap spirituality. It will be something infinitely more powerful and, paradoxically, more dangerous. You will become a complete human being. Imagine for a moment what it feels like to possess a presence that does not need to shout to be heard, that does not need to threaten to be respected, that does not need to beg to be valued. This is the first manifestation of your integrated power, a natural authority that emanates from the depth of your being, not from superficial masks. When you have made peace with your own darkness, something extraordinary happens. The shadows of others lose their power over you. You can no longer be emotionally blackmailed because you know your own psychological triggers. You can no longer be manipulated because you have seen the strategies of manipulation operating within yourself. As the old saying goes, a thief who steals from a thief has 100 years of pardon. But in this case, it is the knower of shadows who cannot be deceived by other shadows. You have developed what the ancients called the vision of the eagle, the capacity to see through social masks and perceive the real motivations that drive people. Your capacity for leadership multiplies exponentially because you no longer lead from the neurotic need for approval, but from the genuine authority of self-knowledge. People intuitively sense when someone has done the deep inner work. They cannot explain it rationally, but they feel that immovable solidity that only comes from having integrated one's own demons. Alexander the Great, Caesar, Napoleon, all shared something beyond strategic genius. They possessed a presence that made others follow them into death without question. It was not superficial charisma. It was the magnetism that results from conquering the most difficult territory of all, the inner kingdom. In your personal relationships, you will experience a freedom you never thought possible. When you no longer need others to validate your worth, when you no longer depend on their approval to feel complete, your bonds transform from relationships of need to relationships of conscious choice. You love because you choose to love, not because you need to be loved. You respect because you decide to respect, not because you seek to be respected. You give because you have inner abundance, not because you expect reciprocity. This is the difference between neurotic power and authentic power. Your tolerance for pain becomes nearly superhuman. Once you have voluntarily faced your own demons, external adversities lose their ability to break you. As Carl Jung said, "What does not destroy me strengthens me." Yet this is only true for one who has cultivated psychological muscle through conscious training with the shadow. The crises that once left you paralyzed are now seen as opportunities to apply your inner strength. The rejections that once shattered you are now interpreted as valuable information. The failures that once buried you are now transformed into steps toward higher levels of mastery. Your intuition sharpens to heights that seem almost supernatural. When you have explored the hidden machinery of your psyche, you develop a profound grasp of universal human patterns. You begin to read the intentions of others in their micro-expressions, in the words they choose, in the silence they hold. But beware, this gift arrives with a responsibility that not every person is ready to bear. When you can see through others as if they were transparent glass, when you can influence emotions and decisions with surgical precision, you become someone potentially dangerous. The ancient sages understood this truth. They knew that the knowledge of the human soul is the greatest and most corruptible power of all. This is why they guarded their secrets so carefully, passing them on only to disciples who had proven the necessary moral maturity. Your creativity erupts in directions you never imagined. The energy once wasted in inner conflict now flows into creation, into innovation, into the building of lasting legacies. You become a force of nature, consciously directed toward chosen purposes, and you finally attain what so few human beings experience in their entire lives: the true inner freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to consciously decide who you want to be, moment by moment, free from the invisible chains of unconscious patterns. You are, in the immortal words of Jung, the human being who has been born twice, once from your mother and once from yourself. Yet here lies the unsettling truth. Not everyone will find the courage to walk this path. Most will choose to keep living on the surface, blaming the world for their failures, hiding in comforting excuses, keeping their shadow in chains, while wondering why they feel so empty. You, however, have reached this point. You have listened to truths that most will not dare to contemplate. That places you in a different category among those who seek real power, not its cheap imitations. If this message has resonated in the depths of your being, if you have recognized your own story within these words, then you are precisely the kind of person for whom this was created. Subscribe to continue this journey into inner mastery, because as the ancient proverb declared, knowledge without action is sterile, but action without knowledge is dangerous. Power is waiting for you. Will you have the courage to claim it? Carl Jung, one of the greatest thinkers in psychology, left us with a teaching that transcends generations. Pain is neither a punishment nor a mere coincidence. It is a signal, a deep call from the most hidden corners of our being, urging us to stop, listen, and reflect on the path we are walking. That discomfort, that unease we so often prefer to ignore, is not there to make us suffer. It is there to wake us up. Think back to the hardest moments of your life, those days when it felt like the world was collapsing around you, when the future seemed uncertain and no answers came your way. Have you ever considered that perhaps those moments were not designed to break you, but to reveal something profound about yourself? Jung firmly believed that suffering is a tool for transformation. Every tear, every frustration, and every loss has the power to lead us to a deeper understanding of who we truly are. Too often, we live trapped in cycles of external expectations, trying to fit into molds that do not reflect our true essence. We convince ourselves that we must be strong at all times, that showing vulnerability is a sign of weakness. But what if I told you that your greatest strength lies precisely in your moments of deepest fragility? Jung taught us that the first step toward healing and growth is facing the parts of ourselves we have repressed, our insecurities, fears, and those shadows, as he called them. Ignoring them does not make them disappear. On the contrary, it strengthens them, allowing them to shape our reality in ways we do not always understand. Have you ever noticed patterns in your life, repeating over and over again? Relationship after relationship, decision after decision, you find yourself trapped in the same cycles. This is no coincidence. Your unconscious is trying to communicate something to you. There may be something within you that needs to be confronted, something you have been avoiding, but that once faced could finally set you free. The pain you feel is not your enemy. It is your teacher. It is there to guide you toward your awakening, toward a more authentic and fulfilled version of yourself. But to understand its message, you need courage, the courage to stop running, to face yourself, and to accept that, although the process may be uncomfortable, the result is worth it. Imagine for a moment living a life completely aligned with your truth, a life where you no longer need to hide behind masks, where you can be yourself without fear of judgment or rejection. This is what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming who you were always meant to be. But this journey is not without challenges. It requires confronting your shadows, exploring your fears, and integrating all those parts of yourself that you have denied for so long. There is a reason why certain experiences impact you more deeply than others, why certain encounters or situations strike a chord within you. It is not a coincidence. These are messages from your unconscious, signals that something within you needs to be discovered, healed, or transformed. Jung believed that our unconscious speaks to us through symbols, intuitions, and emotions. That unease you feel, that discomfort you cannot ignore. It is nothing less than your own soul trying to communicate with you. But here is the problem. We live in a world that teaches us to silence that voice. We distract ourselves with external noise, with the demands of daily life, with the expectations of others. We tell ourselves we do not have time to reflect, that we must keep moving forward without stopping. And in doing so, we disconnect from the most important thing, ourselves. But when you choose to listen to your pain instead of repressing it, something remarkable begins to happen. The answers you are desperately searching for outside start to emerge from within you. Your relationships, your decisions, even your perception of life begins to shift. Not because the external world has changed, but because you have. That is the power of facing your shadows. It transforms you from the inside out. Most people spend their entire lives running from themselves. They fear what they might find if they dare to look within. They fear facing the wounds of the past, the insecurities that paralyze them, the mistakes they would rather forget. But Jung taught us that true power does not lie in avoiding our shadows, but in embracing them. Only when we accept all parts of ourselves, even those we consider dark or inadequate, can we experience true transformation. Think about it for a moment. What aspects of your life have you been avoiding? Perhaps it is a relationship you know is not good for you, but you are afraid to leave behind. Perhaps it is a dream you abandoned because it seemed too difficult, or because someone convinced you that you were not good enough. Whatever it may be, the first step toward healing is recognizing it. Carl Jung would say that by denying these parts of yourself, you create a disconnection between your conscious and unconscious self. And this disconnection is at the root of many of the internal conflicts you experience. The key to resolving this conflict is not to wage war against yourself, but to reconcile with yourself. It is about learning to listen to what your soul is trying to tell you through pain, intense emotions, or repetitive experiences that seem to arise again and again. When you begin to view suffering from this perspective, it stops being something you want to avoid and instead becomes an opportunity for growth. Imagine for a moment that every painful experience you've ever had was in reality a message intended to guide you toward a deeper understanding of who you are and what you truly need to be happy. Jung firmly believed that nothing in our lives happens by chance. Every encounter, every challenge, and every moment of joy or sorrow has a purpose. But to uncover that purpose, you must be willing to look beyond the surface and dive deep into the depths of your being. This is where the concept of individuation comes into play. Jung described individuation as the journey toward wholeness, the process of becoming the person you are destined to be. It is not an easy path, but it is the only one that can lead you to a life of authenticity and meaning. Individuation does not mean achieving perfection. Rather, it means embracing your imperfections and finding balance between your light and your shadow. It is about learning to live in harmony with yourself and with the world around you. One of the greatest obstacles in this process is fear. Fear of change, fear of the unknown, fear of leaving behind what is familiar, even when you know it no longer serves you. This fear is natural. But Jung taught us that growth always involves a degree of uncertainty. It is like walking down a dark path without knowing exactly where it will lead, yet trusting that every step brings you closer to the light. And this is where many people stop. They prefer to remain in their comfort zone, even if that comfort zone is filled with dissatisfaction and pain, because they fear what they might find on the other side. But what they fail to realize is that the greatest risk is not exploring the unknown. It is remaining trapped in a life that does not reflect their true self. When you choose to confront your fears and take the leap into the unknown, something incredible happens. You begin to see how the pieces of the puzzle in your life start to fit together. The right people come into your life. Opportunities that once seemed impossible begin to appear naturally. And most importantly, you experience an inner peace you have never known before. This is not a process that happens overnight. It requires time, patience, and an unwavering commitment to yourself. But the result is worth every effort, because when you reconcile with your shadow, you discover a strength and wisdom that have always been within you, waiting to be acknowledged. This journey inward, toward your authenticity, is one of the bravest acts you can undertake. As you begin to face your shadows and embrace your fears, you realize that pain is not the enemy you once imagined, but rather an ally pushing you toward your growth. Carl Jung often said, "What you resist persists." This simple yet profound truth reminds us that every time we avoid an emotion, a memory, or an uncomfortable truth, we give it more power over us. Think about it. How many times have you avoided facing a situation because you were afraid of what might happen? Perhaps it was a difficult conversation with someone close to you, an important decision you postponed, or a change you knew you needed to make but seemed too overwhelming. Without realizing it, that act of avoidance created a cycle of anxiety, guilt, or frustration that continues to linger in your life. Jung believed that these emotions are nothing more than messages from the unconscious. Messages that, though uncomfortable, are meant to help you grow. If you have the courage to stop and pay attention, you can uncover truths about yourself that will transform you completely. This is the power of self-knowledge. Not only does it free you from invisible chains, but it also gives you control over your own life. Often, our shadows manifest in our relationships. It is in our closest connections that our wounds, insecurities, and repressed patterns come to the surface. Perhaps you have found yourself attracting people who hurt you or facing the same conflicts repeatedly. This is no coincidence. These dynamics are merely a reflection of what you carry within. Jung called this phenomenon projection, the act of seeing in others what you refuse to acknowledge in yourself. For example, if someone makes you feel undervalued or ignored, it may be a sign that there is a part of you that feels insecure or that has not been valued in the past. The key is not to blame the other person, but to ask yourself, what is this experience teaching me about myself? What wounds does my soul need to heal so that I stop projecting them onto others? When you begin to view your relationships from this perspective, everything changes. You no longer see conflicts as personal attacks, but as opportunities for growth. You stop looking for someone to blame and start seeking answers within yourself. This shift in perspective is what leads to true transformation. When you embrace your shadows instead of running from them, when you listen to the messages hidden in your suffering, and when you dare to step beyond fear, you begin to align with your true self. And in doing so, you unlock the wisdom, strength, and peace that have always been within you, waiting for you to claim them. This shift in perspective not only transforms your relationships, but also changes the way you perceive the world. Of course, this process is not easy. It requires a level of honesty with yourself that can be uncomfortable at first. However, it is precisely within that discomfort where the possibility of transformation resides. As Carl Jung once said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This means that it is not enough to simply wish for a better or happier life. You must be willing to look within yourself and confront whatever you find there. The pain you have experienced in the past, the wounds you still carry, are not obstacles to your happiness. In fact, they are the very building blocks with which you can construct an authentic and meaningful life. But in order to do so, you need to change your relationship with suffering. Instead of seeing it as something to avoid at all costs, learn to perceive it as a teacher, one that has something valuable to teach you. Imagine your life as a river. When you resist the natural flow of things, you create turbulence. But when you choose to flow with the river, embracing both the calm currents and the unpredictable rapids, you begin to understand that every twist and every fall serves a purpose. This is the mindset Jung invites us to adopt. Rather than fighting against your emotions or circumstances, learn to work with them. Listen to them. Allow them to guide you to where you need to be. When you start to embrace your pain and integrate your shadows, something profound happens within you. The energy you once spent suppressing or avoiding your emotions is now freed. And with this renewed energy, you can finally focus on what truly matters: your dreams, your relationships, your purpose. It's as if, by releasing the weight of the past, you suddenly create the space and clarity needed to build the future you have always desired. Never underestimate the impact this inner work can have on your life. Jung believed that when we transform our inner world, the outer world changes as well. The right people start to appear. Opportunities that once seemed unattainable begin to manifest. And most importantly, you discover an inner peace that no external circumstance can take away from you. This inner transformation does not only affect your personal life, it also changes the way you interact with the world. As you begin to heal your wounds and integrate your shadows, you become more authentic. You no longer feel the need to wear masks to please others or hide your vulnerabilities out of fear of judgment. You realize that your true power lies in being unapologetically yourself, without pretense or fear. And this authenticity has a magnetic effect. People are naturally drawn to those who are at peace with themselves, those who are not afraid to show who they truly are. This does not mean that everyone will understand or accept you, but it does mean that you will attract the right people, those who are aligned with your truth and who will support you on your journey. Jung believed that our relationships act as mirrors, reflecting both our strengths and our weaknesses. When you begin to work on yourself, the dynamics of your relationships also shift. Perhaps you have had friendships or relationships that felt draining, connections that always demanded more from you than they were willing to give in return. These experiences, though painful, are valuable opportunities for learning. They teach you about your boundaries and the value you place on yourself. When you choose to let go of what no longer resonates with you, you not only free yourself from emotional burdens, but also create space for new experiences and new people to enter your life. This can be frightening at first. Letting go of the familiar, even when it is unhealthy, always brings uncertainty. But Jung reminds us that the emptiness left behind is not something to fear. It is a sacred space where something new can emerge. As you go through this process, you will begin to notice something remarkable: synchronicity. Jung described synchronicity as meaningful coincidences, events that appear to be unrelated yet hold profound significance in your life. Perhaps you think of someone and suddenly they call you. Or maybe you stumble upon exactly the information you need at the perfect moment. These experiences are not mere chance. They are signs that you are aligned with your purpose and that your unconscious mind is working in your favor. Synchronicity is like a whisper from the universe telling you, keep going, you're on the right path. But in order to notice these signs, you must be present, open, and connected to yourself. Instead of filling your mind with external noise or worrying about the future, allow yourself to fully embrace the present moment. Listen to your intuition. Pay close attention to your emotions and trust that everything is happening for a reason. Reaching a higher level of consciousness is not something that happens overnight. It is not a sudden revelation, but rather an ongoing process, a journey of self-discovery that requires dedication, patience, and an open heart. There will be days when you feel like you are making great progress, when everything seems to align perfectly and clarity comes effortlessly. But there will also be days when it feels like you've taken a step backward, when doubts creep in and frustration weighs you down. This is completely normal. Growth is not a straight path. It is a winding road with highs and lows, twists and turns. Every step, even the most difficult ones, plays a vital role in your evolution. The moments that challenge you the most are often the ones that shape you the most. One of the greatest challenges on this path is learning how to forgive yourself. Many times, the emotional burdens we carry are not caused by what others have done to us, but by the regrets and self-judgments we impose upon ourselves. We constantly replay past mistakes in our minds, punishing ourselves for decisions we wish we had made differently. We dwell on missed opportunities, on words left unspoken, on actions we now regret. But as Carl Jung reminds us, the past does not define who you are. What truly matters is what you choose to do today, in this very moment. Self-forgiveness is one of the most powerful and liberating acts you can perform. It does not mean justifying your mistakes or pretending they never happened. It does not mean ignoring their consequences. Rather, it means acknowledging that at every moment in your life, you did the best you could with the knowledge, awareness, and tools you had at that time. Self-forgiveness is about granting yourself the permission to learn from your past without being chained to it. It is about allowing yourself to move forward without the heavy weight of guilt dragging you down. And when you finally choose to forgive yourself, something profound shifts within you. The emotional burden you've been carrying for so long begins to dissolve. In its place, a new sense of lightness and clarity emerges. With this newfound clarity, you begin to perceive your life from a completely different perspective. Instead of obsessing over what went wrong, you start to see the infinite possibilities that lie ahead. And this is the most crucial truth that Jung wanted us to understand. Everything you need to transform your life is already within you. You do not need to look outward for permission to be happy. You do not need to wait for external validation, approval, or guidance. The power to shape your reality, to define your destiny, is in your hands. Every single day, you have the ability to choose how you respond to experiences, how you interpret events, and how you mold your future. Pain, though uncomfortable, serves as a powerful reminder of this truth. It is not merely an obstacle, it is a catalyst for growth. It is a signal that you are alive, evolving, and moving toward a higher state of awareness. Pain pushes you to expand your perspective, to confront your fears, and to tap into the inner strength that has always been within you. As you continue this journey of transformation, you will come to realize that true power does not lie in controlling the external world. It lies in how you choose to respond to it. This is one of the most valuable lessons that Jung left us. Your perception is your greatest tool. Your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs shape the way you experience life. While you may not always have control over external circumstances, you always have control over the meaning you assign to them. Think back to the most difficult experiences of your life, perhaps moments of loss, rejection, or failure. At the time, they may have seemed unbearable, like obstacles too great to overcome. But now, looking back, you may see that those very experiences taught you something invaluable. Perhaps they made you stronger. Perhaps they made you wiser. Perhaps they opened doors you never would have considered before. This is the hidden gift of pain. It forces us to grow in ways we never imagined. Jung believed that every human being has a unique purpose, a path that only they can walk. But to discover this path, you must first shed the distractions and expectations that have been imposed upon you by society, by your upbringing, and by external influences. This requires immense courage because it means facing yourself, your fears, your insecurities, your doubts, It means listening to that inner voice, your intuition, the one you have often silenced out of fear of what it might reveal. Your intuition does not communicate through words, but through sensations, through that deep, unshakable feeling in your gut that tells you when something is right or wrong. But to hear it clearly, you must first learn to trust yourself. And this is where many people struggle. They have spent so much time seeking external validation, looking for answers in social media, in the opinions of others, in the rules dictated by society, that they have forgotten how to trust their own judgment. The modern world teaches us to seek guidance outside of ourselves, to conform, to follow trends, to live by expectations that are not truly our own. But Jung reminds us that the answers we seek are not out there, they are within us. To access them, we must disconnect from the external noise and reconnect with our true essence. This does not mean isolating yourself from the world or rejecting all external opinions. It simply means learning to filter what you hear, to discern between what genuinely resonates with your soul and what does not. It means prioritizing your own truth over the expectations of others. This is an act of self-love, and like all acts of love, it requires practice and patience. When you begin to live in alignment with your true self, everything changes. Your decisions become clearer. Your relationships become more meaningful. Your challenges become less intimidating. This does not mean that life will suddenly become perfect or that you will never face difficulties again, but it does mean that you will have the strength and clarity to face them with grace, confidence, and resilience. Jung spoke often about the importance of embracing all parts of ourselves, our light and our shadow, our strengths and our weaknesses. This process of integration is what allows us to live fully and authentically. The goal is not to eliminate imperfections, but to accept them as part of who you are. Because when you truly accept yourself, flaws and all, you also gain the ability to accept others in the same way. In this context, relationships take on a deeper meaning. Every interaction, every conflict, every connection you form becomes an opportunity for growth. When you are at peace with yourself, your relationships reflect that peace. You no longer seek others to fill your voids or to validate your existence. Instead, you share your life from a place of wholeness and genuine love. This journey toward authenticity is not easy, but it is the most rewarding path you will ever take. And the first step always begins with you. Take a moment to reflect on the areas of your life that need your attention, the emotions you have been suppressing, the decisions you have been avoiding. Ask yourself, what would happen if I chose to face these things instead of ignoring them? What new possibilities could open up for me if I had the courage to be completely honest with myself? The answers to these questions could be the beginning of a transformation that not only changes your life, but also the lives of those around you. When you choose to live from your truth, you inspire others to do the same. This is the true power of authenticity. It does not only transform your inner world, but also has a profound impact on the external world around you. Living in alignment with who you truly are is one of the most liberating and transformative journeys you can embark on. As Carl Jung described, the path to authenticity is not an easy one. It requires deep self-exploration, courage, and a willingness to confront the parts of yourself that you may have hidden, denied, or ignored. However, despite its challenges, it is the only path that leads to a truly fulfilled life. When you embrace your authenticity, you begin to break free from the limitations imposed by societal expectations, fears, and past conditioning. One of the most powerful aspects of this journey is learning to face your own shadows. It means looking inward, listening to your intuition, and embracing both the light and the darkness within you. True strength does not come from avoiding your fears or suppressing your emotions. It comes from acknowledging them, understanding them, and integrating them into your being. You do not need to strive for perfection. Rather, you need to strive for honesty with yourself, to fully accept who you are, with all your strengths and flaws, is to reclaim your personal power. When you make the conscious decision to walk this path, you are not only transforming your own life, you are also contributing to a greater change in the world. Your authenticity becomes a beacon of light for others, showing them that it is possible to break free from the invisible chains that hold them back. Your courage to face your own fears serves as an inspiration for those around you to do the same. This is the ripple effect of awakening. The moment you step into your truth, you give permission for others to do the same. Now take a moment to reflect. Ask yourself, what is my pain trying to tell me? What part of myself have I been suppressing or ignoring? Most importantly, what can I do today to take one step closer to my true self? If this message resonates with you, I invite you to take action. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Perhaps a friend, a family member, or someone who is going through a difficult time. Your actions could be the spark that lights the path for someone else. Let me know in the comments which part of this message touched your heart, or what decision you are willing to make to align with your truth. Every comment is an opportunity to inspire others who are on this same journey. Together, we can build a community where authenticity and transformation thrive. Subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming messages. Every time you interact with this content, whether by commenting, sharing, or giving it a like, you are helping this message reach more people, more souls who, just like you, are seeking answers and a way to live in harmony with who they truly are. Thank you for being part of this community, for your time, and for being here. Remember, change begins with you, and every small step you take today is the beginning of a transformation that will impact your life forever. I'll see you in the next video, and never forget, your authenticity is your greatest power. Carl Jung once wrote something that still sends a shiver through psychologists today. A tree that reaches the heavens must have roots that descend into hell. It sounds like a simple sentence, almost poetic, but it is deeply unsettling because it implies that the deeper you fall, the higher you are capable of rising. Yet there is something Jung did not fully spell out, something only those who have lived it truly understand. When someone who has been to hell returns, they do not come back the same. They are no longer who they once were. And that transformation, that new version of you, will terrify those who only ever knew your wounded side. If you have spent years being the one who absorbs the pain of others, the one who stays quiet when you should have screamed, the one who bends until you are almost broken, then this message is for you. What is coming is not just healing. It is a psychological earthquake. The people who hurt you, the ones who mistook your silence for surrender, are about to face something they could never have imagined. The return of the integrated shadow. This return is not merely about recovery, it is the transformation of everything they thought had destroyed you, and the impact of witnessing it will be impossible for them to fully comprehend. When that shadow returns with full awareness, it no longer asks for permission. Today, I want to show you why your return will be one of the most unsettling things some people will ever witness. Not because you seek revenge, but because you will become completely unreachable to the very tactics that once shattered you. Let me ask you a question Jung himself might have asked. What happens when the person everyone used as an emotional dumping ground decides they will no longer absorb everything and begins to reflect instead? The world is full of people who saw your kindness and mistook it for stupidity. They saw you cry and assumed they had broken you. They watched you retreat into silence and believed they had won. But there was a fatal mistake that all of them made. Every toxic person, every manipulator, every emotional or energetic vampire in your life made the same error. They believed your wound was your identity. They believed the wounded version of you was the only version that existed. They had no idea they were watching a caterpillar and calling it weak simply because it could not yet fly. Jung devoted decades to studying this pattern. He documented case after case of individuals who passed through what he called the dark night of the soul, a total psychological collapse that, from the outside, looked like destruction, but in truth was reconstruction. And this is what he discovered, the part that changes everything. Those who fall the lowest rise the highest, but not in the way people expect. They do not return soft or endlessly forgiving. They return precise, grounded, immovable. Now think about every person who hurt you when you were at your lowest point. The friend who disappeared when you needed them most. The family member who struck when you were vulnerable. The partner who betrayed you when you were desperate for support. They all made the same mistake. They thought your capacity to feel deeply was a weakness. They thought your empathy was a flaw. They believed your silence meant defeat. But Jung understood something they never will. Silence is not always submission. Sometimes silence is observation. Sometimes retreat is not failure, it is preparation. While they were celebrating what they thought was your destruction, you were in what Jung called the incubation period. You were inside the cocoon, and they mistook your transformation for your death. What you went through is known as the night sea journey. Jung borrowed this idea from ancient mythology. The hero is swallowed by the whale, descends into darkness, and emerges transformed. But there is a crucial detail most people overlook. The hero does not return to make peace with the whale. The hero returns as someone the whale can never swallow again. That is who you are now. You are not the same person who walked away wounded. You are the version of yourself that cannot be hurt in the same way twice. And now this becomes truly fascinating from a psychological perspective. While you were silent, while you were healing, while everyone assumed you were broken, something profound was happening in your unconscious, what Jung called the integration of the shadow. Your shadow is not evil. Your shadow is everything you were taught to repress. Your anger, your boundaries, your ability to say no, your ability to walk away without explanation, your willingness to let others face the consequences of how they treated you. For years, perhaps decades, you kept that shadow locked away. Why? Because you were taught that good people do not get angry, do not set limits, do not ignore, do not stop caring. You were taught that your worth was measured by how much you could tolerate. So you tolerated everything. You absorbed everyone else's dysfunction. You made yourself smaller so others could feel bigger. You carried the emotional weight of everyone around you while being criticized for moving too slowly under the burden. But something happened in your darkest period. You met your shadow, and instead of fearing it, instead of suppressing it, you did something that changed everything. You integrated it. You looked at your anger and said, "You are not my enemy. You are my protection." You looked at your boundaries and said, "You are not cruelty. You are necessity." And that is where the real transformation began. You looked at your ability to withdraw from others and said, "You are not coldness. You are wisdom." Jung called this process individuation, the ability to become whole by accepting every part of yourself, even the parts society taught you to hide. And that is what makes this process so powerful and so terrifying to certain people. Once you integrate your shadow, you become psychologically complete. You no longer operate from light alone. You now operate from your whole being, light and darkness, softness and strength, compassion and immovability, all existing together within you. The version of you that is returning is not trying to prove anything. That is precisely what makes it so powerful. The old version of you would have written long explanations, paragraphs, trying to be understood, trying to justify your feelings, your decisions, your boundaries. The new version of you does not explain itself. The old you would have apologized for things you never did wrong, carrying guilt that was never yours to begin with. The new you does not apologize for existing, for taking up space, for choosing yourself. The old version of you needed others to understand your perspective. You wanted them to see your heart, to recognize your intentions, to validate your pain. The new version of you does not need understanding, and it certainly does not need approval. And that is exactly why your return will terrify those who only ever knew your wounded side. They built their entire relationship with you around your willingness to shrink. They became comfortable with a version of you that absorbed their toxicity without questioning it. They used your empathy as a weapon. They took advantage of your forgiveness. They mistook your patience for permission to treat you however they wanted. Your kindness became something they exploited, not something they respected. But now, when they look at you, something is different. They cannot quite name it, but they feel it deeply. You no longer react, and that unsettles them, because they relied on your reactions. You no longer explain yourself, and that frustrates them, because they expected you to defend yourself while they attacked. You no longer seek their approval, and that terrifies them, because your need for approval was their power over you. Carl Jung observed this phenomenon in depth. When a person individuates, when they become psychologically whole, they radiate a different kind of presence. It is not aggressive. It is not cold. It is not cruel. It is solid, grounded, unmovable. There are no longer cracks where manipulation can slip in. There are no buttons left to press, because you have disconnected them all. For those who only knew how to relate to you through control, guilt, and manipulation, this new version of you feels foreign. You are no longer someone they can manage. And that loss of control is what truly frightens them. Let me tell you exactly what they are experiencing when they see you now, even if they cannot put it into words. They are experiencing what Jung called the mirror effect. For years, you absorbed their toxicity. You were like a sponge, soaking up their bad behavior, their projections, their dysfunction. They could be cruel to you, and you would turn inward, wondering what you had done wrong. They could betray you, and you would forgive them before they ever asked for forgiveness. They could ignore your needs, and you would convince yourself that your needs did not matter. But when you integrated your shadow, when you became whole, you stopped being a sponge. You became a mirror. Now, when they project their toxicity onto you, you no longer absorb it. It reflects straight back at them. When they try to manipulate you, they see their manipulation clearly reflected in your calm refusal to engage. When they try to make you feel guilty, they see their own tactics exposed in your absolute silence. This is psychologically devastating for them. Most manipulative people operate unconsciously. They do not analyze what they are doing. They act on automatic patterns. But when you become a mirror, you force them to see their own behavior clearly. And most people cannot tolerate what they see when confronted with themselves. So, just as Jung predicted, they escalate. They do what they have always done, only more intensely. They try harder to pull you back into the old dynamic. They may suddenly shower you with affection. They may attempt to make you feel guilty. They may play the victim. They may try to awaken your empathy by pretending to be hurt by your change. But this is what Jung understood, and what you now must understand as well. Their escalation has nothing to do with you. They do not miss you. They miss having power over you. They do not miss the relationship. They miss the dynamic where you were beneath them. They do not miss who you are. They miss the version of you they were using. And this is where your return becomes truly terrifying for them. The old you would have seen their escalation and thought, maybe I am being too harsh. Maybe I should give them another chance. Maybe I am the problem. The old you would have convinced yourself that setting boundaries was cruel. But the new you, the individuated you, sees their escalation for what it truly is, a manipulation tactic, and you no longer react. You do not engage. You do not explain. You simply end it. Jung wrote extensively about what he called participation mystique, the unconscious psychological bond between people. In healthy relationships, this bond is mutual and respectful. In toxic relationships, it becomes parasitic. One person feeds off the other's energy, validation, and emotional labor. For years, you were the one being fed upon. But when you integrated your shadow, when you became whole, you severed that parasitic bond. You cut the energetic cord. And now they are experiencing withdrawal. That is what you are witnessing when they suddenly reappear in your life, acting confused, as if they cannot understand why you are different. They are not confused by you. They are disturbed by the absence of access. And that is the quiet power of the person you have become. This is what happens when people say things like, "You've changed," with disappointment in their voice, as if you owed them a version of yourself that stayed wounded forever. That sentence is never neutral. It carries an accusation, a nostalgia for your pain, a subtle demand that you return to who you were when they had access to you. And that is exactly what fuels their desperate attempts to provoke you, to pull any reaction out of you, even a negative one. Because any reaction means they still have access to your energy. But you don't give them that access anymore, and the loss of that supply is what truly terrifies them. The irony that Carl Jung would have deeply appreciated is this: they created the very version of you that now frightens them. Every time they hurt you and you stayed silent, it wasn't weakness. You were observing them. Every time they betrayed you and you absorbed the pain, you weren't naive. You were learning exactly who they were. Every time they pushed your boundaries and you didn't react, you weren't being a doormat. You were gathering data about their character. And now, whether they realize it consciously or not, you hold a complete psychological profile of them. That knowledge is power, and they know that you have it. That is what creates that flicker of fear in their eyes when they see you now. It's not that you are going to expose them. It's that you could. It's not that you are going to retaliate. It's that you no longer need to. Your indifference is far more powerful than any revenge could ever be. Jung had a term for what you are experiencing now: enantiodromia. It describes the tendency of things to transform into their opposite. The most generous person becomes selective about where their energy flows. The most forgiving person becomes discerning about who deserves forgiveness. The most understanding person becomes clear about which behaviors they will no longer tolerate. The most accommodating person becomes unmovable in their boundaries. This is not bitterness. This is not becoming cold or cruel. This is psychological evolution. This is what happens when you stop abandoning yourself just to maintain relationships with people who abandoned you first. This is what happens when empathy integrates with wisdom. This is what happens when kindness finally meets boundaries. It is what happens when you realize that sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is allow people to face the consequences of how they treat others. Now consider what happens when one of those people, someone who knew your wounded self, tries to test your new self. They can't help it. Their unconscious needs to verify whether the old dynamic still exists. So they try something. Maybe they send a message pretending nothing ever happened. Maybe they show up where they know you'll be. Maybe they use guilt, create drama, or attempt to trigger your empathy through subtle manipulation. This is where everything Jung taught about individuation becomes visible. The old you would have felt that familiar pull, that obligation to respond, to explain, to fix things, to make peace. Your heart would have started racing. Your mind would have rehearsed what to say. You would have felt guilty for having boundaries. But the new you, the individuated you, feels nothing. No anger, no sadness, not even satisfaction. Just nothing. A calm, clear, immovable nothingness. This is what Jung described as being centered in the self. You no longer react to their attempts at manipulation because you are no longer invested in maintaining the image they have of you. You don't explain yourself because you no longer seek their understanding. You don't defend yourself because you are no longer on trial in their court. You have stepped so far outside the dynamic that their attempts to reconnect simply dissolve into emptiness. And when they see that, when they truly realize that you are no longer the person they once knew, that is when fear sets in. Toxic people operate on a very specific psychological principle. They assume everyone thinks and acts the way they do. They believe your kindness was strategic, your empathy manipulative, your forgiveness a sign of weakness. They project their own psychology onto you. So when you walk away, they assume you are playing a game. They think you are trying to manipulate them into chasing you. They think you are waiting for an apology so you can regain power. But you're not playing. You're not waiting for anything. You are simply done. And the reality that you genuinely no longer care is incomprehensible to them. They keep checking your social media, looking for any sign that you're thinking about them. They ask mutual friends about you, hoping to hear that you're struggling without them. They create small situations, subtle provocations, hoping for a reaction. But you don't react because they no longer occupy your mind. You are busy becoming the best version of yourself, and they are no longer even a footnote in that story. Jung wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and that is exactly what is happening in your life right now. You are shedding every false identity you built to please people who were never satisfied. You are releasing every trauma bond you maintained by confusing loyalty with self-betrayal. You are stepping into a version of yourself that exists independently of anyone's approval or disapproval. And that integrated, whole, sovereign version of you is what terrifies those who only knew your wounded self. Your wounded self was controllable. Your healed self is sovereign. Your wounded self needed external validation. Your healed self generates validation from within. Your wounded self feared being alone. Your healed self understands that solitude is better than feeling diminished. Your wounded self believed love meant sacrifice. Your healed self knows that love means mutual respect or nothing at all. This is your return. Quiet, without noise, without drama. It is not vengeful. It is absolute, complete, final. You are not returning to prove anything to anyone. You are not returning to close chapters with people who were never honest with you. You are not returning to make them understand what they did wrong. You are returning to yourself. And that return requires leaving those people behind permanently. One of the most powerful things Jung ever said about this process was this: I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become. And you have chosen to become someone who no longer allows themselves to be a container for other people's dysfunction. You have chosen to become someone whose peace is non-negotiable. You have chosen to become someone who understands that those who cannot celebrate your growth were never meant to be part of your future. So when they look at you now with confusion, frustration, and that unnameable fear in their eyes, understand what you are witnessing. You are seeing the moment a manipulator realizes their manipulation no longer works. You are seeing the moment a narcissist realizes their source of supply has dried up. You are seeing the moment a toxic person understands that the person they took for granted has become completely inaccessible to them. And that inaccessibility, that indifference, that calm refusal to engage is what terrifies them, because it means they have lost something they will never get back: access to you. Your return was never about them. It never was. Your return is about reclaiming everything you gave away, trying to maintain relationships with people who never maintained you. It is about taking back the power that was always yours, the power you were taught to suppress, but now consciously reclaim. Your return is about choosing yourself with the same unwavering loyalty you once gave to those who never chose you in return. And if that version of you frightens them, so be it. Their fear is not your responsibility. Their discomfort with your boundaries is not your problem. Their inability to manipulate you is no longer something you need to fix. You are done shrinking so others can feel big. You are done being wounded so others can feel powerful. You are done explaining, defending, and diminishing yourself. Jung dedicated his life to the study of human transformation and concluded that the highest psychological achievement is individuation, becoming oneself fully and authentically. And that is exactly what you are doing. You are not becoming bitter. You are becoming more defined. You are not becoming cold. You are becoming more careful. You are not becoming cruel. You are becoming more conscious. So to those who only knew your wounded version, to those who grew comfortable with it, to those who assumed it would last forever, your return will terrify them completely. Not because you have become someone bad, but because you have become someone they will never be able to manipulate again. And for those who built their relationship with you on your willingness to tolerate mistreatment, your refusal to continue tolerating it will feel like the end of their world. And it is. It is the end of the world where they had power over you. But it is the beginning of the world where you have power over yourself. The moment you stop explaining yourself to people who never wanted to understand you anyway, you become truly free. And remember this, your return does not need witnesses. It only needs to be real. This is the moment you choose to take the next step in your evolution. Just like the return you have already experienced, this is not about waiting to be chosen. It is about choosing yourself, taking control, reclaiming what is yours. And if what you've heard resonates with you, if you are ready to transform and step fully into the power that was always yours, then don't stay behind. Subscribe and activate notifications, because this journey doesn't end here. Every step forward is another movement toward individuation, toward that complete version of you that no longer needs explanation and no longer waits for validation.